Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little interesting topic, at least that I found somewhat interesting. And the reason why I thought that I would talk about it is because this is going to give a little bit of the insight as to what certain fighters overall have, or the opinion overall that they have about the fighter, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. And of course, Devin Haney overall and Canelo Alvarez, they met up. I believe that Devin Haney asked for a picture with Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez because they both appeared at the Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Julio Cesar Martinez fight. And that fight, all in all, let me tell you what, that fight, just to overall give my little bit more of a breakdown opinion of Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, you can tell, is a very special fighter. I think a lot of people somewhat either misinterpret my opinion of him, of Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. I do personally believe that he is a very special fighter. I even think that you could put him on the level of an all-time great fighter. Perhaps maybe even the greatest fighter, within those lighter weight classes. But one thing I do overall stand by when it comes to Mr. Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez is that if you are able to push him back, if you are a fighter that maybe all in all has enough power and enough size with you, just like that one Thailand fighter Sorang Bisai had, you somewhat can push him back and he somewhat will be a little bit limited. And that's why he was able to lose both of those fights against Sorang Bisai. So even though I have a great amount of respect towards Chocolatito, that's why I said in my recent video of that fight review why I wouldn't necessarily quite put him on the same level as someone like a Canelo Alvarez, or maybe even a Terrence Bud Crawford in terms of a skill set, or maybe someone like a Tyson Fury for the heavyweight division, or a Vasily Lomachenko. The reason why I say that is because those fighters, in my opinion, they're a little bit more multidimensional in terms of their skill sets than what a Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez would be. Because if you are able to push him back, if you're able to somewhat compete with his power, if you're somewhat able to compete with his athleticism and overall his offensive skills, he does have a little bit of a problem. Whereas I think some of those other fighters that I just listed, they are more multidimensional. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a great amount of respect for Chocolatito Gonzalez. I do think all in all that he is a very, very special fighter. But anyways, just moving on from that conversation, I thought that I would talk about this recent topic that I found very, very interesting. Devin Haney, of course, and Canelo Alvarez were both at that event, the Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Julio Cesar Martinez event. And I believe the reason why Canelo was there was because, of course, Martinez, I believe, was in the corner overall of Canelo Alvarez, but I could be wrong. But when it comes down to it all in all, or he has somewhat to do with that gym. And when it comes down to it all in all, Devin Haney, of course, had the pleasure of taking a picture with Canelo Alvarez. And what Devin Haney apparently said in a couple of interviews after that is that he personally believes that Saul Canelo Alvarez is the current pound-for-pound king. And in fact, not only did he say it, he says it basically without any hesitation whatsoever. And if you guys overall want to check out the video, when it comes down to it, be my guest. I believe this video is by Little Giant Boxing, as it says on the bottom of the screen right there. But when it comes down to it all in all, I just thought that this was particularly interesting. Now, once again, I'm not a fan of Canelo Alvarez. I'm not a fan of any of these fighters. I would ruin my logic and objectivity. But I have been a person all along that has been alleging for a very decently long while now that I do believe that Canelo Alvarez is the current true number one pound-for-pound fighter. I think that when you take a look at the dimensions that he has, you can debate that he is the best pure skilled boxer in all of boxing right now. You can debate that he has just as many dimensions as any other fighter out there today. When it comes down to it, that his skill set is up there with any other fighter today. And on top of that, when you talk about his resume, I mean, it's really not even that close. It just is what it is. That's why Canelo Alvarez, in my view, he has to be the clear number one pound for pound. And Devin Haney overall ended up saying that, in a couple of interviews. But I just thought that this was particularly interesting because I did not see any of the channels of new media or the LDBC really bring this up. It's very interesting because they have no problem bringing up Juan Oscar De La Hoya or Juan Manuel Marquez or, a fighter all in all that may overall tear down Canelo Alvarez, or basically say that he's not accomplishing history. They basically have no problem mentioning that. But when it comes to a fighter, and very interestingly, interestingly enough, a black fighter that they tend to overall to stick up for, when it comes out in Devin Haney, when he overall even says that Canelo Alvarez is the true number one pound for pound, there's crickets. It's not mentioned anywhere. So like I said, they try to go on this narrative when it comes down to it of basically saying, well, for those of us that truly know what's going on, for those of us real people, the ones that speak facts, we all know that Canelo Alvarez, he only fights people off the worst performances. And, we all know that Canelo Alvarez is, he's the European number one pound for pound. He's not the true number one pound for pound. Well, if Canelo Alvarez truly was only the European number one pound for pound, or was the person all in all that basically old media, as they would claim, is the only one that basically, is looking at him as the number one pound for pound. Why are there even certain fighters like a Sugar Ray Leonard or a Devin Haney or a Gervonta Tank Davis that currently admit that they believe that Canelo Alvarez is the number one pound for pound fighter, or that they believe that Canelo Alvarez is accomplishing great history? If you were to ask certain fighters like that, now, are there certain fighters that have also said that they believe that Canelo Alvarez is avoiding David Benavidez? Do they, are there certain fighters out there, even all-time great fighters, that have stated that they believe that maybe a Terrence Crawford is number one pound for pound, or maybe someone else is? Yeah, there's been certain fighters overall that have said that. Certain fighters like a Juan Manuel Marquez, certain fighters overall, like a Roy Jones Jr., who would maybe say that Terrence Bud Crawford is the number one pound for pound, Floyd Mayweather Jr., a few others, when it comes down to it. But at the end of the day, let's just not sit here and pretend that there are no fighters, or that just everyone believes all in all that Canelo Alvarez is not accomplishing history. And this is why, all in all, I thought that I would talk about this, because even certain fighters like a Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis, even certain fighters overall, even black fighters, when it comes down to, these guys all in all, that they basically try to allege that Canelo is avoiding black fighters and avoiding the elite black and Latino fighters. But yet you have certain fighters like Gervonta Tank Davis and Devin Haney that truly believe that Canelo Alvarez is the number one pound for pound. When you heard about Gervonta Tank Davis talk about Canelo Alvarez, what did he say? He basically said that I am the Canelo Alvarez of 135. Basically, what was Gervonta Tank Davis saying? He basically said that, I believe that I am the best fighter there. So it is what it is. Some of these fighters, all in all, even some of the ones that they may talk about Canelo Alvarez, basically in interviews or certain stuff like that. But then whenever Canelo Alvarez approaches them, they always ask for a picture. Even someone like a David Morrell, even someone like a David Benavidez, someone of a sort, what do they all say about Canelo Alvarez? Oh, well, I admire him. As soon as overall Canelo Alvarez comes in the room, he's basically almost like a king when it comes down. A lot of people always talk shit about the king when it comes down, but then when the king actually comes down, the hallway, overall, a certain amount of people actually get to see him with their own eyes. They pretty much look at him with complete admiration. So once Canelo Alvarez overall completely walks into a room, the aura is completely changed. Now, once again, like I said, I'm not a Canelo Alvarez fan. But when it comes down to it, all in all, there's just no denying the facts. It is what it is. And the facts is that Canelo Alvarez, at the current moment in time, is the true number one pound for pound king. And obviously, I'm not the only one that has this opinion. There's many, many other people that have this opinion. Roberto Duran, more than likely, would probably rank Canelo Alvarez as the current number one pound for pound fighter. Sugar Ray Leonard, when it comes down to it. You also have certain fighters like Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis that would rank him as the number one pound for pound fighter. So obviously, this narrative of, oh, well, Canelo's only ranked number one pound for pound because, he's looked at as a Caucasian Hispanic, or, basically they're just trying to tear the black fighters down. Well, if that were true, you want to have certain fighters like Devin Haney or Gervonta Tank Davis and many other fighters claiming that Canelo Alvarez is the number one pound for pound. You even had other certain media out, guys or analysts like a Stephen A. Smith, who is a black ESPN analyst when it comes down. And now, of course, certain people would allege that Stephen A. Smith is a sellout. But, I'm not sure if I would allege that just because he said that about Canelo Alvarez. Stephen A. Smith is a person all in all that, in my view, even though, of course, he has to work for his own company when it comes down to, or work for ESPN, at the end of the day, which, he doesn't own, he still overall tells, certain, opinions. That doesn't mean that I always agree with him. But at the end of the day, he even believes that Canelo Alvarez is the current number one pound for pound. I've reviewed other channels when it comes down to, like Chronicles of Judah 144. He believes that Canelo Alvarez is the true number one pound for pound. So like I said, this narrative, basically, that people try to go on of Canelo, oh, he's basically avoiding the biggest fights. He fights people off their worst performances, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, when it comes down for Canelo Alvarez, allegedly always doing this, I just find it very interesting that a lot of these fighters, when they finally meet him, they always say that he's the true number one pound for pound, or that that's the fight overall that they want the most. Or, when these channels try to allege certain things like Dante's Boxing Nation, oh, well, David Benavidez, and, he wants overall the Canelo Alvarez fight more than the Demetrius Andrade fight because Canelo Alvarez is the easier opponent, but he's more popular. No, they want Canelo Alvarez because overall, if you fight Canelo Alvarez, even if you fight him for less money, you're going to get more money later on down the line because your legacy is set when it comes down to it. Whether you win or lose against Canelo Alvarez, it's like winning or losing against Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather Jr. Yes, of course you would like to win, but when it comes down to it, the risk and the reward majorly outweighs the risk. It just is what it is. That's the same thing when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. And not only is he the main cash cow in boxing, but it's very clear that he is the true number one pound for pound king, at least at the current moment in time. Now, maybe, like I said, can Terrence Crawford maybe catch up to him if he beats Errol Spence Jr.? It's very possible. Maybe if Alexander Usyk, if he beat Tyson Fury, or maybe if Fury beat Usyk, maybe could one of those guys have an argument? You could certainly debate that. If maybe there's another one in the mix that I'm not, remembering at the current moment in time. If Errol Spence maybe defeats Terrence Crawford, maybe would he have a debate in it? Certainly. So like I said, it's not impossible for Canelo to get surpassed, in my view, as the number one pound for pound. It's just right now, the way things are looking, it's going to be a very uphill battle. But we'll see. I don't know what happens. But anyways, I just thought that I would talk about that because I found that very interesting. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.